My self-promotion starts off with the recent MYB Awards, where Kilimanjaro won MYB Acumatica ANZ Community Partner of the Year, part of which is these events where we look to being a good community member and doing what we can for the Acumatica community. We also won MYB NZ Partner of the Year. We won Acumatica Salesperson of the Year. That was our salesperson, Peter Chung, that outsold everybody else in the channel. We were a finalist in the MYB Marketer of the Year. Our marketing team, run by Isabella, is responsible for putting on these events as well. And as you can imagine, it's a huge logistic exercise to do this in a number of different venues and to do it online. So thanks to our marketing team. We were a finalist in the MYB AU Partner of the Year, and we were also the winner. And many of you will be familiar with Velixo, because Velixo is a third-party or add-on product connected service that's very popular in the Acumatica family, amongst Acumatica users. Velixo ANZ Partner of the Year as well. And probably of all of those awards, the most satisfying one is one of our clients, Go Transit Media Group, and many of you will be familiar with Caleb because he's attended and spoken at many of these community events. So Go Transit won the MYB Acumatica Business of the Year Awards, and it would be remiss of me not to let you know that these awards, you can nominate your business for these awards. So now in 2025, as the year draws to a close, so in about 8 months' time, let us know if you wish to nominate your own business, and we will support you in that. I'm now going to go on to just talking a little bit more about the mid-market, which is essentially the market sector that all of you operate in. MYB has always been known as software for small companies, and throughout our years as XO implementers or XONet implementers, and in the early days of MYOB Advanced and now Acumatica, we've always had this obstacle in the market where people say, oh, but MYB is there for small businesses, not for businesses like ours. Well, that's changed now, and MYB has actually put enormous emphasis on the mid-market, and recently produced a report called The Bigger Picture. And if you haven't seen this report, it's worthwhile. Just Google MYB, The Bigger Picture report. There are two of them. One is AU and one is NZ, brought out in March 2025, and contains an enormous amount of information about the mid-market and shows a real depth of understanding of how the mid-market operates in Australia and New Zealand. I've got no doubt that a little bit later on, MYB will talk more about this report, but one of the things that struck me is that businesses in the mid-market are very innovative compared to large companies and small companies. And that's actually you. And we see that in our client base, where clients are continually coming to us and saying, what about this? And how do I do that? And is it possible to do this? And they challenge us because they are developing new stuff all the time and thinking about new stuff. And there's some statistics to back that up. Why are mid-market companies so innovative? And these were numbers from that report where they said these were the top motivators behind the current approach to innovation in business, where 41% were innovating to achieve their goals. And broken down, that also looked at improving competitiveness, building new processes, attracting more talent, and then even a number of them that just liked to be at the cutting edge of technology. And as far as that last one goes, we are going to talk a little bit about AI and about where is that cutting edge of technology and where is the bleeding edge. I'm going to go back a little bit now to those of you that attended the last year's user groups. And last year we spoke about finance in focus, the evolving intersection of finance, strategy, and technology. And during my presentation there, I spoke about the rapid changes and advances in technology, where we looked at how long it had taken Copilot to reach 1 million users which was about 26 weeks. And then we looked at Dell-E and we looked at ChatGPT, where we were talking about literally a couple of weeks before it became well known and people were starting to use it. We also looked at some relatively, this is exactly 12 months ago, by the way. We looked at some relatively amateurish at that stage images created pixel by Dell-E. And we as humans could look at those pictures and say, well, that looks like it's real, but we know that we're unlikely to have Trump and Biden together hugging a chimpanzee. So we can assume that it's not real. And a year ago, people would gasp when we showed this. We also had this one where the New York Times had a photograph there of a Yeti and two people. It looked like a very old photograph, and we could look at that and know that that wasn't real. Same with Elon Musk kissing a robot. But today you look at that stuff and it's really pretty passe. It's just, we all know it's there. We know that this is what happens. We know that all those images can be fake. Literally, this has happened in 12 months. I also put up this collation of photographs last year and said, these are, again, AI-generated photos or pictures built up pixel by pixel. And this was when an AI engine was asked to produce faces of people that were trustworthy. And it always amuses me to see what the ratio is there between male and female. And there's even a child in there. And when I now recruit new salespeople, I hold this up and have a look and see whether they look like any of these. They don't, and they still get the job. But that is AI for you. And we defined AI, and we said it's the simulation of human intelligence and machines that are programmed to mimic human actions and tasks. Again, I put that up a year ago, and it was difficult to understand. And here we are a year later, and we are slap bang at the beginning of an AI era that we are all starting to understand, and understanding the differences between AI and machine learning, which is really just a subset of AI, and gets very confused in the hype and in the marketplace, where what has been in software for years and years as machine learning is now referred to as AI as part of the marketing cycle. And we spoke about last year the connected business. The connected business is a concept that was developed by MYOB, where they spoke about how you had all of these processes in your company. And if you could reach a point where all of them were interconnected and you had real-time information across your company available to everyone, how that would lead to a connected business and make you incredibly efficient. And we said last year that technology was going to be the center of this. So we've progressed a year down the track, and certainly in terms of hype, the hype has become fever pitch, and we have statements like this being made. This statement was made by the Salesforce CEO, Mark Benioff, where he said, this intelligent technology can be scaled without limits. And we sort of shook our heads at this and say, well, let's wait and see. Skeptics like me would say, let's wait and see. But then a couple of weeks ago, I think it was exactly 2 weeks ago, Elon Musk made a statement. And Elon Musk, love him or hate him, when he says something, I do sit up and take notice, because this guy has actually he's got no fear of the future and just does whatever. And he said within 2 years, intelligence engines will become smarter than any human. And by 2029, 2030, smarter than all humans combined. Now, I'll leave that up there for a moment for you to digest, bearing in mind that we are now on the 1st of April, 2025. So you're looking at 4 years and you're going to be in that position. And I think we'd better believe it, the rate of change and what's happening, where change is now measured in days and weeks, not months and years. I spoke a bit earlier about the hype cycle, and the hype cycle looks something like this, where these new products go from somebody decides that there's a reason to build something, and be that a ChatGPT model or any large language model, you then go through this stage of the peak of inflated expectations. And that's really where we are now, where people are actually selling software that does not yet exist because they know it will exist in 6 or 8 weeks, not 6 or 8 months or 6 or 8 years. So you have this peak of inflated expectations. You have the trough of disillusionment, and I'm going to take you through a personal example of this in a moment, of my trough of disillusionment. You then have a slope of enlightenment and the plateau of productivity, which is where we are aiming and where hopefully you will see AI being incorporated into your software that improves productivity in your business. So to go back to my personal experience of peak of inflated expectations, I was fiddling around with a photograph of my wife's mother that had got water damaged many years ago. And I thought with my rudimentary Photoshop skills, I would be able to restore this photograph. So I took Photoshop, opened up Photoshop, and I did a few YouTube videos, and I played around with a magic wand. And I was able to take that photograph and remove some of the cracks and add a little bit of hair. And I ended up with that. And I thought, well, that's pretty good. But each time I logged into Photoshop, it kept telling me that it had this AI engine. And using plain English, I could ask it to do what I was trying to do. So after 8 hours of fiddling around with a magic wand, I then went and I uploaded it. And I was expecting to see something like that. Unfortunately, that's not what I got. Peak of hyped expectations, and I got that. I'm not sure. It seems to have managed to identify the picture frame. That has remained, but for some reason, the face has been identified as the wheel of a car. I think the 5 studs is probably okay because you've got 2 eyes, 2 nostrils, and a mouth. And I think the brake mechanism is probably this watermark down the side over there. But that was my hyped expectation. I didn't think that that's what I was going to get. I wasn't happy with it. But not to be deterred, I thought there has to be other software that does that. And I went slap bang into the next hype expectations, which was an app that said you could colorize old photos and you could repair scratches. Needless to say, my expectations were dashed again, and I didn't end up with anything different to what I started with. However, in 6 weeks' time, I've got no doubt that will work. So when we start looking at you and your own company and how you're going to actually do something with AI, at the moment, it's a buzzword, it's out there. What can it actually do for me other than write a poem about my wife's mother? What can it actually do in the company? So very fundamentally, companies will have to reinvent themselves. They'll have to relook at their strategy, their structure, and their processes, because what AI will do, if you want to immerse yourself in AI, it's going to be a bottoms-up movement. It's going to be driven by curious people in your organization that stumble across applications, AI applications, that do make a difference to technology and that will assist you with your connected business of having real information available to all people in the company at all times. From an Acumatica point of view, Acumatica is being really, really sensible in how they're doing this, because they have managed to cut through the hype and are looking at how are we going to use AI within our software? How are we going to make this AI power available to the users of our software? So what do you want to do? As a business, you probably want to increase revenue, decrease costs, improve customer satisfaction, and improve efficiency. So what you'll see starting to seep into Acumatica is you'll start seeing automation, you'll start seeing interactive assistance, and you'll start seeing intelligent advisor. And those are the 3 areas that Acumatica has decided to focus on. And over time, and not too much time, by the way, because already in the new editions, the new versions that have been released in the States, they will seep through into the Australian market in very shortly. These things are already visible in there. But remember, amongst all of this, and I guess I'm trying to anti-hype AI a little bit, After all of this, the value is actually in your data, and it's the same old story, garbage in, garbage out. But as long as you are actually collecting real data and accurate data in your systems, you will be able to use the power of AI and improve your customer intimacy and personalized products and services, really get to know your customer and really engage with them. I'm going to move on from that now to a little bit of cybersecurity. And those of you that have been on a journey from a legacy on-premise system to your SaaS software, Acumatica, will know that in previous user groups, going back not that far, probably only 3 or 4 years, I would always talk about the importance of backups. And I wrote a little article still on our website that says, I've seen grown men cry. And that was about people that didn't have backups and then had catastrophic failures of their systems. In those days, it was usually hardware related. Today, those catastrophic failures are generally related to cybersecurity or some sort of cyber incident or some sort of crypto-locked virus. And it happens to people, whether they are in the cloud or whether they are on premise. It happens to people. The biggest access that hackers gain to your system is probably simply through usernames and passwords that are not well maintained and are not complex enough. There was a bit of research that was done not that long ago that said that in 2024, 2.74 billion was lost to scammers in Australia alone. And there was a 61% increase in cyber-related incidents in New Zealand. So these are actually quite frightening statistics and worthy of noting and taking on board that you do need to protect yourself from cybersecurity threats. Some of them are very, very simple. Some of them are pretty complex. I'll give you an example of a very simple one, which some of you would have experienced yourselves. So whenever I travel, somehow or another, somebody is monitoring me, maybe looking on LinkedIn or on Facebook or something, and knows that Ronnie is attending a user group in Auckland, therefore he is not in the office, and a phishing email gets sent to our accounts department from a spoofed address that looks as if it's coming from me saying, I'm going to need an urgent transfer to the lawyers. What is our daily transfer limit? Somebody that's not that aware, and perhaps somebody that hasn't worked that long in my finance department, might mistake that for a question I might ask and hit the reply button. Mistake number 1, don't hit reply, start a new email, and might hit reply and say 25,000, and quick as a flash, my response, which is obviously not my response, comes back and says, please transfer $22,573 to what looks like a very formal name of a lawyer, Abigail and Stevenson Lawyers, giving the BSB and the account number. And as we know, the banks don't check the name against the account number and BSB. They warn us about that all the time. And let me know when you have done this. This is urgent. In all likelihood, if we fell for that scam, they would come back and say, come back tomorrow and ask for another $25,000. But so be very aware of those ones. Simple email received. Make sure that people in your organization are trained and understand and know how to recognize those. I'll give you another example. One of our clients, somehow or another, a malicious actor got hold of their username and password, monitored which, by the way, he thinks may have happened when he was on the internet at a hotel on an unsecured connection. The client had their inbox monitored. What happens? Kilimanjaro's invoice flows into their inbox. Somebody takes that email, strips out the PDF copy of the invoice, changes the account details on the PDF copy, attaches it to a new email, makes it look as if it's coming from accounts at Kilimanjaro, and says, attached is an updated copy of our invoice. Please note our new bank account details. As brazen as that. Fortunately, the client's finance team picked that up, phoned us. And then another example, a client had a repository of documents the way that, for example, on my website, when you download white papers, that's coming from a repository of documents, PDF documents stored on the web somewhere. Would never think that that could potentially be the source of a hack. The client had a repository of old invoices. The repository was hacked and they got a ransomware note. So those are examples of some basic fraud, but where we're heading, and when I say that AI is moving at an enormous pace, we are going to go from this, where you look at that and say, those could potentially be real people. You are now going to go to video, where you might have to say, I thought those were real people. And I stumbled across this, where a CFO of a large company was asked during a video conference call to make a transfer of $25 million. And he was in there with all of his superiors. And it turns out that in that video conference, everyone he saw was fake. So be alert for the simplest of scams and the most complex of scams. And I subscribe to this newsletter called Cyber Daily, and every day you have things like this being published. These are only the reported scams. Most people won't report them because they're a little bit embarrassed to say, oh, my password was the name of my dog or something like that. So from cybersecurity point of view, what you need to do is put in place now, and I say this in the same way that I used to tell the legacy on-premise users to make sure they had backups. I say now, make sure you've got a cybersecurity incident response plan. Make sure that you're prepared, that your people are trained to recognize the scams, that you have detection and analysis, that you know how to contain it, that you know how to get rid of it, that you know how to recover, and that you do a post-incident review so it doesn't happen to you again. In terms of what to do immediately, make sure you use complex passwords. This is not a hard thing to do. It's a pain, but you should do it. And every time you are asked for a complex password, make sure that you use that option, because it's your best protection against people being able to guess your password or hack their way in. Use two-factor authentication. Again, it's a pain, but it's protecting you against these types of scams. And the last one is actually pick up the phone. If you're going to transfer money to somebody based on an email, pick up the phone and talk to them and check that those are actually their bank account details. So Grant, that's it from me. Thank you very much. I probably went a little bit over time, but hopefully next time we have a user group, somebody will thank me and say, I avoided a cyber scam because I remembered what you said in your introduction to the user groups. But that's it from me. Thank you.